Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode, and this episode is very important because today we will discuss on some important issue. Especially we will discuss on pollution prevention. We have our world famous speakers. We have Professor Kirpal, we have Professor Adrian, we have Professor David Smith, Madam Durga Das, Mr. Dan, Mosharraf Hossain sir from Bangladesh. He's my professor as well. And we have our youth panelist, Mr. Adam, Mr. Nicholas, and Mr. Aaron. So I want to start from Professor Adrian. We are discussing on pollution preventions, and you have many interesting research, and even previously I shared some of your research work with our audience. Especially recently, you do some research on COVID, and this is actually get a huge exposure around the world. So if you share a few of your research work with our audience, I think it will be very helpful for us.
Thank you very much. Well, so today's topic is about pollution. So I think there's two sides to pollution. One is pollution which is generated, and also how do we remove.
Who's gonna begin?
Professor Adrian, please.
Yes.
Yes.
It's very loud noises.
Can you all hear me, or you want me to begin?
Professor Kirpal, Professor Adrian actually start right now.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So, so thank you very much. And so there's two sides. This is talk about pollution. So I think there's two sides we should think about. One is the reduction of.
I think you just maximized.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
There we go. So one is the reduction of pollution by both business and individuals, and then the other side is techniques to remove pollution from the environment. So let's take something very simple like water. A lot of the world's population don't have access to clean water. So we need to tackle both sides, which is why is the water dirty? So we need to get industry as well as farming and individuals to reduce the pollution somehow, normally through some government policies. But there's also new techniques with the nanotechnologies, which can turn dirty water into clean water. And one very good example is actually in Singapore. When I was there many years ago, they started to recycle the wastewater. So at first, it was more like proof of concept, but I believe now that some percentage of drinking water that you get from a tap, a few percentage is actually recycled wastewater. So a lot of people think that sounds horrible, the sewage water turning into drinking water, but according to the tests, the water is as cleaner than WHO standards. So I think so it is possible to tackle pollution on both sides. So one is reduction of pollution, and then by industry. Farming also actually produces a lot of pollution, and also with the fertilizers and things, and individuals. And then the second way is to recycle wastewater into clean water, like is being done in Singapore. I'm not sure which other countries are doing that, but Singapore definitely recycles water, and some percentage of drinking water actually is recycled wastewater. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Adrian. Professor David Smith, can you hear me? So in that situation, Madam Durga Das.
Thank you, Sharif, and so good to see a full house here. As always, I feel a little overwhelmed when I see the amount of experience, on the screen, and I try to present a perspective. And as always, I like to present the perspective from India. Even though I've lived in the US for 25 years, there is enough representation of what is being done and can be done from there. And so I'd like to take what is possible from an Indian perspective. Over 2 million people died due to pollution of various kinds. It could be air, water, or soil. And in India, 2 million people die almost every year. I don't believe we had as many people die from COVID-19 as we regularly have them die from pollution. And it's a case of an overpopulated country, in the cities, and not overpopulated, but due to the strong agricultural theme that exists in our villages, where biomass causes pollution. That it's a kind of an uphill battle that we are facing in India. Not to say that one should not do or cannot do, but it's like when your cities are planned for a certain population, and that was done probably 100 years ago. And in 100 years, if we haven't changed the system or been able to put money into infrastructure to change the system, and suddenly your population has, bludgeoned to 10 times what that city can even handle, it becomes very hard to kind of retrofit solutions. So hard decisions need to be taken about how to make, new systems work in place. And for that, of course, we need the support of the national government, the state government, and people within cities, industry, business houses, to all contribute to making that change happen. So, unfortunately, in India, we speak a lot. We do believe that we have to do something, and there's a lot of conversation that happens at international conferences from our government. But the ground reality is change is very, very slow. It's extremely difficult to see change happen. If I take just plastics, in the south of India, at least, from all of and the south of India, you're talking about half the population, 500 million people or so. I see very few small cities, who are actually enforcing the use of enforcing the policy of no plastic. Whereas in most other cities, there's plastic everywhere, and people have no discipline, unlike in the Western world where you throw your trash just outside the window or out of the car, where they are punished for it. In India, for some reason, much as we have so much education in cities, I don't understand why they have no basic common sense of hygiene, of not polluting our roads and cities. But this is a problem that needs to be fought very long and hard. So in India, I think it's a difficult battle. The areas of water, because it's become a necessity now, because we have completely deprived of 20 Indian cities will be without drinking water in the next few years. Chennai and a few other cities have already experienced ground zero where water is concerned. And so somehow I think this desperate situation that has happened has at least pushed people into saying, what can we do about water, reuse of water? So I speak to many of the pollution control boards in different cities, and they are trying to be very, very proactive and making change happen. But so at least I see a little bit in water, but with air, with biomass for agriculture, and with just people's sense of personal hygiene and cleanliness, I think we're still a long way to go.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor David Smith, how do you want to analyze today's topic?
Oh, the area of this is, again, one of the multifaceted ones that we have. And the prevention approaches and things are just so dynamic on this area. And it's in home, schools, industry, government, agriculture. And part of what we need to do is make sure that we look at this in all those different areas. And we can get more into that later, but I think that's the big top area.
Thank you, Professor. Professor Musharraf Hossain, sir. So, how do you want to analyze this pollution preventions, and specifically, as you are from Bangladesh, what type of projects actually developing inside Bangladesh for managing pollution?
Thank you very much. I'm very sorry that Bangladesh is one of the most polluted countries in the world. Unfortunately, for many reasons, and one of the reason is influx of the people. We are the most densely populated country in the world. So this is the situation. But good thing is that yes, there are some preventive programs, and we have about 43 different sectors. In case of government, actually they are trying, but problem is this: the compliance at the industrialist level, at the organization level, is not up to the mark. So that's why government has passed some law. Previously, it was easy. Now that actually there is a ministry called Environmental Ministry, the Forest and Environmental Ministry, and now in every industry they need to take the permission, and permission is very tough. The second thing is that the monitoring from the buyer side. In case of RMG sector, you probably know we are the largest, second largest garments industry exporting country, and most of the products are going to North America and Europe. And buyers are also putting some pressure because they have some corporate social responsibilities. As part of that, they are also putting some pressure. And in some of the cases, the government has taken some preventive program, like even if you are now building construction a building, you have to take the permission. Previously, it was not the case. Uh, Other thing is the awareness programs by government and some of the non-government organizations, and that is also working very well. But altogether, these are working very less because our people, our populations are not that much, uh, carrying all these programs. So that's why some of the you know voluntary organizations nowadays are coming up, and they are trying to do some uh, you know preventive programs and involving the people, and this way it is going on. And I hope that the way it is going on with the strict policy formulation and monitoring from the government, and plus some of the awareness programs raised by the government and non-government organization, I think things are getting better, but it will take time. I'm not saying that you will see anything, any good thing tomorrow, but the process has been started, and a lot of donor organizations are also supporting. So that's a good thing. The buyers are supporting, donor organizations are supporting, government is trying, and the civil societies are also involving. The greatest problem is we have only 9% forest resources covering area, whereas many of your countries it is much more than even 30-40%. So that's why uh, things become very difficult. But good thing is the government had started the process, initiative process, trying to involve different stakeholders in order to uh, improve the situation. Uh, so that's what I see. The government initiative and private sector initiative together, I see a good trend. I'm not seeing any
Thank you.
good result as yet, but some good trends. How about you?
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Actually, World Talent Economy Forums, our initiative, actually, we are trying to minimize the gap in between developed nations and developing nations. So that's why we are go for arranging this kind of open dialogue. This open dialogue actually help us to understand different culture, different economy, and let's say we have people from North America, from Asia Pacific, from Europe, as well as from South Asia. So we can understand each others and we can collaborate together. Uh, Mr. Dan, you are also a politician, and you love to contribute in political area. Especially, you have a strong engagement with Transhumanist Party. They are actually supporting World Talent Economy Forum initiative. So how do you want to analyze this pollution prevention and another things? I love to learn that regarding this climate change. What do you think your party, especially Transhumanist Party?
Thanks, Sharif. I actually call myself a poetician, kind of like the pirate party did in Iceland. I feel like people should be able to hold their public servants accountable to actually do what they say they're going to do, and we need to make our democracy more responsive. So if you're not voting, vote. If you are voting, run for something. But yeah, the topic of pollution is really tied up with property rights in a way that people don't talk about too much. And, we've had an extractive, monopolistic economy for a long time. It's been based on monopolizing the resources of nature with military force. And it really goes against the spirit of people like John Locke. The Lockean proviso said you can have natural resources like land as long as you leave it well enough and good enough for others. And we've kind of trampled that idea. However, there are places like the nation of Chile has something called the conservation right, and they're encouraging other countries to adopt this idea. And it's the idea that we all have an interest in nature, and it's like Daniel Schmachtenberger observed. The value of a whale in the ocean is basically zero, but the value of a whale being cut up on a whaling ship is $1 million. So, we have to figure out how to revalue. Let's have some true cost pricing in the economy. We have all these what are called externalities in economics, where they're unborn costs that are not being rolled into to our economy. But actually, with the smart contracts and the blockchain and things like GIS, Geographic Information Systems, we really have an amazing opportunity to remedy these things. There's a plan to create intentional communities that I'm a big fan of, called a Fierce. It involves no coercion, or it's a totally voluntary way to have a society free of government and politics without using coercion or electoral politics. So that's one of my big causes right now. I think we could become a cluster of intentional communities. What's happening in Afghanistan is just a shame, and my heart goes out to them. But people really need to be able to form communities that reflect their values. Anyway, back to pollution. I've worked in the environmental field actually for decades, mostly in groundwater cleanup on military bases, actually as a contractor. And I was just saying, we call this planet Earth, but it's 80% water, 70% water. We should call it planet water. Our bodies are about the same percentage of water. Our blood and our tears is the same salinity as the ocean water. So we really need to take care of planet water. And one way to do that is with acknowledging that if someone trespasses with their pollution, and really pollution is just a resource out of place. So there's a thing called the zero waste movement, where anything that's where it shouldn't be is waste. But if it's in a lab beaker, it's great. It's a feedstock you can use for experiments or making products or something. So we need to create a zero waste mentality. And I know we have a lot of speakers, so I won't take up too much time.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Mr. Adam.
Thank you, Sharif. Good to see so many people here. Without skirting around the main topic here for this discussion, I think people, scientists, campaigners, researchers, experts need to look into safe measures and procedures that will help to repair, heal, reverse a lot of the damage that pollution has already inflicted on our world, above, on ground level, below, since the Industrial Revolution. Looking at this question more carefully through a historical lens, I think it is amazing that during the first industrial revolutions, we had towering chimneys pumping all sorts into the air. And remember, in the UK, we had the Great Smog of London in the 1950s. And a century before that, in the 1850s, again in London, there was the Great Stink. And that was because of untreated sewage waste as well as industrial sediment and such. And I think London itself was known as the Great Stink after that for a while. It became an unflattering term of endearment, or not, because of its olfactory reputation. So yes, since then we have made good leaps and bounds in hygiene since then as well. And now with the COVID crisis, I think innovation in the field of hygiene will accelerate a lot more in a lot less time, reach some kind of escape velocity. Exponential development is what I wanted to mention to further my point on this topic, which is we have witnessed exponential or close enough exponential across all sorts of sectors and industries, an obvious one being computers. We had ENIAC machines filling up entire rooms and corridors, plural, in the early 20th century, all the way up to now, where we now have a million libraries of Alexandria in the palm of one hand. I like to use the Library of Alexandria as a metaphor for some of my discussion toolkits. So like with medicine, taking surgery as an example, more specifically, we've gone from cutting people open without any anesthesia to keyhole surgeries and advanced relaxants and anxiolytics, some of which are being now used to treat mental health disorders like ketamine. So you've got all these interconnected fields and innovating in a parallel at different speeds. So I find it to be absolutely amazing that industries are still polluting what they are polluting with. We used to have towering chimneys since the 19th century, all the way up to now. You could say that we have even more waste exhausts out in the sea as well, like with oil rigs. But if industrial waste technology and methods of depositing, exhausting, and recycling were to make similar leaps and bounds as the previous examples I just mentioned, that will probably mean building an infrastructure, refitting it again, taking it down, building it back over and over again, which could be very costly. Needless to say, so there is that. Thank you, Sharif.
Thank you, Mr. Aaron.
Well, as we start talking about our individual responsibilities in dealing with pollution, I think it's important to note that most of the pollution actually comes from the world's military-industrial complex. I don't really remember exactly where I was doing that research, but it was pretty overwhelming. And you got to look at it in several different ways. There's smog pollution. There's and the different hydrocarbons, all those things making their way into the atmosphere. That's no good. You also have plastic pollutions, and I'm not just talking about the plastic laying on the side of the road or floating down the river. I'm talking microplastics in the atmosphere, clouds of them, blowing over whole continents, and in the oceans as well. You also have to look at things like light pollution and how that affects migratory patterns of animals. But what I do like is that there's been a lot of tying together of pollution and waste, in that what we are calling pollution is really waste that isn't properly managed. And I also like how it was brought up that there are ways to implement systems that have zero waste, or the waste product is actually beneficial in another system. So analyzing these and building markets around them, or trying to establish ways forward with these in mind, I think is going to help a lot. As far as the microplastics in the atmosphere and things of that sort, that's frankly, it's terrifying. I haven't heard of any solutions to those sorts of things yet. Navigating away from plastics is going to be one of the biggest, or moving towards biodegradable plastics, such as hemp plastics and all that, is going to be one of our hugest steps forward as a clean civilization, as a clean species that is no longer seeking to just exploit the earth regardless of the cost, regardless of the long-term implications. Again, as usual, I'm a bit sleep deprived and caffeine dosed, so sorry for the rant, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I really do not want to miss Professor Kirpal, but I think he's actually world famous speakers, different Ivy League university he always visit, and he's a very famous speakers in Asia Pacific. So I don't know if internet problem solved. Definitely, I want to add him. But Mr. Nicholas, how do you want to analyze today's topic?
Yeah. Sorry, I there's so many people I didn't know when my turn was. I wasn't ready. So Aaron just mentioned that the military complex is one of the biggest contributors to pollution. And this is true, and they actually don't account for that when they account for the USA's contribution to pollution in the world. They don't add that together, actually. But overall, 100 companies in the world contribute to 71% of GHG emissions. That's it. 100 companies are 71% of GHG emissions. That's crazy. That makes individuals seem very small in this discussion of pollution. And what we can do even more as individuals is recognize that this world is capitalist. For the good and bad, that's how we measure the success of nations today, is how well they perform in capitalism. So your dollars vote. When you buy something, you're voting. Okay. When you decide to pick this product over that product, you have made a decision that told the world that it's okay for this company to do something and it's okay for this company to do something. So you, as a consumer, we must be more intelligent. We must critically analyze what we do more, not all the time, but yeah, more often when you're purchasing something, you should consider, is this a good company? Is it a local company? Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, these guys are some of the biggest contributors to pollution. When you purchase them, you say it's okay that they pollute. And, you know, I'll always mention that we need alternatives to water heavy foods. Cattle and rice, for example, take a lot of water. There are alternatives, and hemp is the biggest alternative. Hemp seeds instead of rice. Hemp will a lot of biodegradable products. It can stimulate economies. It's an amazing thing, and it doesn't have to be the thing that people get the smoke. It doesn't have to be the intoxicant. It could just be the plant that produces a lot of benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor Adrian, can you hear me, Professor Adrian? Actually, there is a question from audience. Specifically, we have Mosharraf Hossain sir example from Bangladesh, and he shared that Bangladesh is overpopulated countries and they have a lot of pollutions. So our audience want to know, like how do overpopulated and underprivileged countries prevent pollutions? Like what type of strategy this like country like India, country like Bangladesh or Pakistan they can take, or Indonesia for take as a
Well, I've worked and lived in Malaysia for many years, and I've also lived and worked in Japan for many years. And Japan has a very high population density, but it's an incredibly clean country. So I believe that a big factor must be the culture. So probably in the we must start teaching children from a very early age in school to be conscious of pollution and littering in the environment. So I think it doesn't really depend on the population density, because you can see countries like Japan are extremely clean, and even China. Some parts of China used to be horribly dirty, polluted, but they've improved a lot. So I think it's a big factor would be the education of the young children, and it's maybe it's difficult to change adults, but children definitely can be educated at a very young age. Even here where I am in Australia, when I was young, I was born 1971, and at that time people still used to throw broken glass on the street or beach, and it was a normal thing. But the government made a mass campaign in schools and also television to not litter, and now people would find it very almost all people would not litter because of that. They've been educated to keep the environment clean. I think it's a combination of carrot and stick. There's also the government can introduce very high penalties for littering, or if you're a company for, emitting pollutants. So, and then so carrot and stick approach maybe can solve this problem. But I believe it's not related to population density. It's people and especially young people can be educated to be very, very clean and to be very careful of the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor David Smith.
Yeah, the discussion is such wide ranging. It's really interesting to me. And one of the analogies in pollution prevention that I think is good for us to go back and think about is the pollution environment we were in with cigarette smoke. And that was treated in the United States by the Environmental Protection Act and others like that. And the Clean Air Act was put in place. But what was interesting in the way it looked at pollution prevention is they identified three broad areas: a primary prevention, a secondary prevention, and a tertiary prevention. And yeah, I think as we look globally at pollution prevention, that is not a bad approach, because what it tells us to do is, how can I begin to deal with it at an approach at the source generation and begin to do that? How can I go at the secondary and the third level impacts? And that is kind of how you do it. It's like in water pollution control. You look at how to prevent the chemicals from getting in the water. They're in the water. How do you clean them? How do you do the other things like that to preserve water? How do I prevent uh, industry misuse? How do I, even in our homes, repair leaking faucets and leaky irrigation systems and like that? So this approach of the primary, the secondary, and the tertiary, I think, is one that if I'm trying to put in place pollution prevention programs uh, in countries that have not had them before, I think this is an excellent methodology to begin to use, to because it lets you involve the appropriate stakeholders at each place, and it can be so targeted that it's actionable. Where the very broad, how do I prevent pollution, in most instances is not actionable out the door. And I really think that is one of the approaches for the nations that we have to use. And then you can put appropriate regulatory, appropriate education in place to make it happen.
Thank you, Professor. We have our another professor, Professor Donald. So how do you want to analyze today's topic? We are just discussing some point on some different solutions we have for pollution, for preventions and different kind of thing, especially happening in the developing nations. And we have our professor from Bangladesh as well as from India. There, Madam Durgadas, already she is providing solution for the Indian communities. Beside that, when we think about pollution prevention, what type of strategy we can take? And especially you are a big fan of Finland. Finland is a good country for sustainable ecosystem. So how do you want to share your views with our audience?
We'll talk about Finland in a second, but I've been listening to the show, and I want to point out that when you get to India, one of the pollution problems is that people don't have bathrooms. Basically, they don't. I think in the United States we forget that in the developing world, some of the things that we take for granted, like
Bennett, I just pulled up my homeschool list of some of the curriculum.
Sorry, Professor.
Okay, we don't have the we don't have the we all have solid sewer systems and septic systems and laws that require the make sure that no waste gets into the drinking water and but that's something that we have the money to do. And as the developing world develops, it's hard to implement things that they don't have the money to pay for necessarily, or at least they may have the money to pay for, but the way that the structure of the country is the money isn't being used for those things. However, there was a wonderful effort in Bangladesh where the country basically dug latrines. And so in Bangladesh, people go to the bathroom in, the poor people that are outside of the cities now go to the bathroom in latrines so that their waste doesn't wind up in the drinking water. And just kinds of pollution like that we don't really think of in the developed world because we've had laws about it for a long time. Another thing is that
Hi, can
people,
all of you hear me?
hello?
Yes.
A lot of people in the developing world burn coal or even wood or even dung and other kinds of things to be able to heat their houses. So if you go to some places, just them cooking dinner and using heating their houses, it's so incredibly much smoke that you can't believe it. It's just it seems dirty and awful. And so there are things that can be done that are very a lot simpler than like the effort in Bangladesh to dig latrines and convince people to start going to the bathroom in the latrines. That's also something that's been talked about in India. Modi's talked about it, but it hasn't really happened to the degree in India that it's happened. About what I read was that something like 40% of the people in India still go to the bathroom outside. And that gets into their drinking water. So that's a kind of pollution that's a little different than what we're talking about. Now, on the other end would be Finland, who is a wealthy country relatively wealthy country. And they are so into being environmental. They're one of the most environmentally sustainable countries of all. And they do, actually even have sensors in all of their lakes to monitor the pollution.
Wonderful.
Potential pollution from the paper making mills that they have. And we can all get to that point. People have been talking about the military industrial complex, but I'm going to finish up by just pointing out that if a company, any company, any industry pollutes and they don't clean it up, then that is actually financially rewarding to them, because if they pay for the cleanup, then their profits are going to be lower. And that's in economics, that's called a negative externality. And in Finland, what they've done is they have clamped down on that. And basically, I mean, if you take your trash and dump it on your neighbor instead of paying for it to go in a landfill, it saves you money. And so that has to be regulated at a higher level. In the United States, there's people that fight that tooth and nail because there's companies that are dumping waste in the rivers and polluting in all kinds of different ways. We make regulations so that they have to stop polluting less, and then they fight us tooth and nail. So that's at the other end. So I'm finished.
Thank you. Musharraf Hossain, sir. There are many interesting points. Actually, Professor Donald actually add is that in the discussions how we can take better strategy. In some point, definitely India is a big country. They have a huge amount of people, more than billions people. Bangladesh also doing some area like good, especially healthcares, educations, and human rights. So when we discussing on pollution preventions, also you are working for one of the best research organization in Bangladesh. It's ICDDRB. So actually, how we can like engaged with different kind of strategy, what we are observing, let's say in Finland or the European country or Scandinavian countries especially. Even I really love to learn more from Professor Kirpal, but somehow I cannot add him for technical reason. uh, but how you want to analyze this point, Professor Musharraf Hossain sir?
Thank you very much. As I mentioned during my previous talk, that we have just started. Some strategies has developed at the government level, but at the private sector level and the civil society level, still the matter is at the awareness level, right? Kind of creating awareness. As uh, as you probably know, you are also from Bangladesh. For last 20 years, the the campaign against the polythene is going on for last 20 years. But you see, the success is not that much remarkable. Despite the very strict law, despite the people are trying, civil societies are trying, but still, the use of polythene, you know that this is the, there are some scientists here, you all know that how polythene can be, polluting the whole country. So this is there.
Mhm.
There are anti-use of polythene and a lot of things are using. Like in the many of our rivers are polluted because of non-existence of some of the ETP influence treatment plant by the different companies in the different sectors. So strategy is formulated in conjunction in after consultation with the private sector. As you know, the private sector is very much powerful in Bangladesh. Government is powerful, but private sector together is more powerful because they are in the position to implement it, whatever decision is taken. In terms of strategy at the private sector organization level, these are not that much present. Uh, However, at the different university level and different research organizations, they are trying to put this agenda uh, very
Let
much
me just say
uh,
that
on the table. I can
um,
mention some of
first of
the donor
all,
organizations. I can mention about Australia, Australia and it.
uh,
They are trying to give some funds and support for the climate change initiatives and
yeah,
climate change projects in Bangladesh. And this has
Mhm.
been started. But as many of the experts are here, the getting a result from the strategy on the issue like pollution prevention, it will take time. But the process has been started, the strategy in place, implementation has started, monitoring is weaker, and now we need some kind of support from the developed countries. As you know that
I just want to say
because of the carbon footprint and carbon use by the developed countries, we are the victim. I can give you an example of the offshoring of the some of the industrial products in Bangladesh, like garments industries. Many of the offshoring companies are working in Bangladesh, and they are not taking very strong initiative in order to prevent it, because offshoring is creating lot of creating some of the carbons and polluting our water, and that's are killing the fishes on the river. So process started. I am again and again sharing, but the problem is when you have 170 million people in a small piece of the land. There's a 55 square kilometer land is Bangladesh, and we have
say,
170 million people. You can imagine, and most of them are not highly educated, very ordinary
Mhm.
educated. So whatever plan you put in the place. Our major focus should be on the awareness raising, and that has been doing by the government, but this is not enough. So that's all I can mention. That strategy is a very high thought things, but you see, taking the strategy at the implementation stage also requires some kind of education at the and the ordinary people and the frontline people. That is not cascading down properly. That's there we need to work. As you know that there are country level strategy, then organizational level strategy, and then implementation level strategy and operational stage. So things are not getting down to the operational stage, and that's the problem. But again, I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic that things has been started. 20 years, 30 years back, we did not hear anything about pollution prevention, but now the agenda is on the table and people are working. So I see that a positive trend. It will take time, but we really need the support from the developed countries in order to, you know, take the agenda further in order to implement. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. One point, because as I am from same countries, like always we see that developed nation, especially European Union, they also support for climate change and different kind of things. Also, Bangladesh has strategy according to planning ministries. Personally, I know that they have 100 years plan for this climate change and other things. But fact is that we have many big corporations right now after 10 and 12 years of economic revolutions. Do you think that our big corporations, they are actually aware about climate change and they are taking necessary initiative on green technology, pollution preventions, especially when Bangladesh is one of the places where actually maybe 20 to 30% land we may lose maybe in few years. So in that situation, our local corporation, those who are highly influential, I believe they are capable. Definitely they are capable. So they are aware of this kind of climate change. They're helping government, or they're taking initiative for their local ecosystem.
Uh, in terms of awareness, they know what to do. But it is an expensive program. It is affect negatively in their profit. So they are not doing that at the level which we really want. Today there is a big news posted by in the LinkedIn. I just saw it by the managing director of the British American Tobacco Company, and they are saying that they are the highest paying tax paying company in Bangladesh. You see that in one hand the tobacco company is polluting the whole country. In another country, in another way, government is giving them a lot of trophy and all these things because they give the most tax. So this is so you see the problem. In one hand, they are polluting the whole country. In the other hand, they are doing some tree plantation in the name of CSR. But bottom line is, the smoke itself can pollute the country significantly. So, when government is getting the highest tax from the tobacco company, they are getting some privilege. Although there are a lot of discussion going on against the tobacco, but the things will become difficult. So that's why the point is very straightforward answer, Sharif. They know, they understand. There are a lot of people who fully understand, but when it is a matter of this is the initiative cost to the company.
Right.
This
I was
is the
saying that
initiative
we have
cost
to
to
be
the
very
company. It's not
careful
the income. So
how
when
we
it is the cost to the
communicate
company,
this
they give a second
idea
or
of
third thought in order to start. So
pollution.
there, we need strict compliances pressure from the government and the law enforcing agencies. That is very very important. But these are not there because most of the big corporate is owned by the business people, and they are the MPs. About 60-70%. The lawmakers are the owner of the corporate house. So you see, it is very difficult to pass the law in the parliament when they are also they are in the both place. They are the owner of the big corporates and they are also the lawmakers of the country. So that's why strict law is not coming up. There are some
Understand.
law
Lot
that
of
Understand.
passed,
noise
Thank.
but
pollution
you,
Well, we need to
you
be very,
realize I'm
very
not
careful
undermining the business people, but they're the business owners, they're the
to get
corporate owners, and they're also the lawmakers. So this is the problem.
here.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
the
Thank you,
reality,
Professor.
when we see that Bangladesh is the lowest range in terms of pollution prevention, whereas other countries are in the highest
Yes,
level, so we don't feel good. But this is the reality.
yes,
But
yes.
again, I can,
Sir, a
I'm an
person.
optimistic person.
Yes,
I see that the things has been started.
yes.
Yes. How about
Sir, personally, I know that you run the largest corporate forum for human resource management. I know you have all of the corporate bodies from Bangladesh local ecosystem. So, personally, I believe that climate change and this kind of things, maybe your HR
can I
federation
can I
may
mention
bring
just
in the
one
front
thing?
line. Yes,
Just mention one thing. From our federation, we have almost decided and it's a huge campaign of paperless human resource management. You know, the paper consumption is one of
excellent.
the area where. So when we have less trees and we have no luxury, and so many of our office management is on the manually through using the paper. So now we are camping the paperless transaction in the office, and particularly the human resource profession could be totally paperless. Those kind of campaign we are doing, and we are getting a lot of support. And we have also a green alliances of the human resources. So we are committed not to
Wonderful.
use papers and
I
to
was saying
destroy the
that
trees
there
and
is a
save
need
our
for monitoring
environment
pollution
and not to do further pollution.
universally
So
and
these things
globally.
are going on, but
Thank you.
uh, impact we don't
And
see that much impact as of now. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Professor Kirpal, can you hear me? Actually, I want to give you chance because of internet connections. I cannot give you floor. Sorry again. I'm really sorry because Professor Kirpal definitely a very valuable resource for today's discussion. Somehow I'm missing him. Madam Durgadas, uh, you are corporate personnel. You are doing a lot of things in India, in Silicon Valleys, and your organizations also moving forward around the world. So how actually like you are actually transforming your corporations, and what our developing nations corporation can learn from your organization when you working something like water management and this kind of thing. And still I believe that developing nations need to take care of this kind of technology. Even Bangladesh, even Pakistan's, even Malaysia has some challenges for water management and this kind of things. So what are your views?
So, before I jump into answering a specific question, Sharif, I just want to address 2 points that came up. I'm not sure if he's here still, but somebody mentioned that density is not an issue
Mhm.
because there are dense countries like Japan that have addressed the issue of pollution. It's not
in
necessarily.
a
I
world
agree in
in
a
which
manner of
there
speaking. It's
is a
not
lot
just
of
about
noise,
density. It's density along with
so what
uh, it's
we need
density
to
along with
do
awareness and education, and it's a big population to get communicate
is
the impact of
so
what will be if people do not learn to follow healthy practices. So it's a combination, and one cannot dismiss density as not being a reason. um, Having said that, the topic of Bangladesh, I come from Tamil Nadu, and we have had, at least, and I still believe, one of the top textile, producing cities in the world. We are called the Philly of the East. And in the recent past few years, because of the pollution of water due to textiles, the government came down very heavily on the entire city of Tirupur, which contributed to probably the most amount of garments that get exported in the world. And a lot of that, because of that pressure, moved to Bangladesh. Unfortunately, now Bangladesh is struck with this problem. So I guess they need to also address the problem of pollution, water pollution because of textiles. So segueing into the question you asked me, one of the things, I am passionate about water, and this is what I do for a living. And when I kind of retired from the valley, I said I wanted to do something that makes change. It was either energy or water, and water was the one that I jumped into. we are constantly talking to corporations about not only about alternate sources of water, which is something we do, we bring water from air, but also talk about reuse of wastewater and wasted water, so that the water that is produced, whether from air or the ground, can be used and reused several times over. We recently launched a product called the Cleanse, which not only produces water from air and let's say that gives it to laundries, for example. We then take the use of the wastewater from the laundry, treat it, and give it right back. So neither are we throwing away bad water, nor are we taking any input of water from the ground. Now, this way we battle both, and this is now something that we're moving into, automobile manufacturing, because they use a lot of water. And earlier this evening, I had a call with somebody who produces the most amount of parts for all the top companies, the auto manufacturer like Mercedes, the Hyundai, that in India, and they are very keen to see how we can produce water from air and treat it so that both sides of the equation, they are neither consuming from the ground, which is already so depleted, nor are they throwing wastewater out and contaminating. So this is a message that I continually take to industry. We take to industry, we take to residential complexes, we make systems for independent homes. So we're kind of doing this multi-pronged attack. And hopefully with the COVID, the relaxations of the the
contribute to the
lockdowns,
global
we
dialogue
will be
that is taking
we will be able
place.
to go out
It
there and do more
is very
more of the
urgent.
work and get our awareness out. Sorry, there's some crosstalk
Mhm.
on everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry about that. Professor Kirpal, can you hear me? Professor Kirpal, I'm sorry about that. Orpita, I think she's a new speaker, and always she try to support World Talent Economy Forum. Very energetic. Orpita, how do you want to analyze today's topic? We are discussing on some solution for the developing nations. So if you have something in your mind, I know you are from India and you are an activist. So how do you want to analyze today's topic?
So, firstly, thank you very much for inviting me in this show. And I'll definitely talk in the context of India, the Indian concept. See, as if we talk about the pollution programs and policies in India, the policymakers have attempted a lot to make and develop different kind of policies. But since India is a developing country, there are different kind of the developmental issues and developmental parameters and compulsions. So it did not work. We all know that it did not work very favorable till 1960s. But after 1960s, in 1972, after the emission of the
We all
Stockholm
today.
Conference, there emerged a lot of pollution policies and such as water control policies, the NCEPC, the National Community for Environmental and Pollution
The
Coordination Board started, and different kinds of water pollution prevention and air pollution prevention were attempted to be made. But I was listening to Durga ma'am. She had put up a very ground level question that why aren't we able to make this possible on the ground level? Why is it only into the policies? So it's one of the very emerging and one of the very important issues. So as a youth and as an activist, I would suggest and I would put my opinion in this way, that this is the very basic hygiene. If we talk about the environmental prevention, it should be included in our day-to-day lives. It is included in the education policies in the schools and universities. But as as we take the food, as we take the water training, as we take the livelihood training, then we must be given different kinds of trainings. And India needs a lot of training as it is a developing country. So it should be included in the activities of day-to-day lives. And I would say that there are a lot of changes in India have also come regarding the hygiene and regarding the prevention. But there are some small steps and as kid or as student or as a person we can take to save the environment? Because see, such as for example, there are a lot of talks which have been ongoing on plastic use. So there are basic and very small steps that we can develop in our day-to-day life, such as using the reusable water bottle instead of using the plastic bottles. We must use the dustbin, and we must teach the kids as we teach them to behave properly, to learn the good manners, to learn the good touch and bad touch. We must create the awareness programs. The village areas, the remote areas where there is lack of education, where there is lack of development, we must teach them about the environment. And as far as agriculture, industry, these things are concerned, there are some of the basic issues and such as using the less environmentally harmful pesticides. Durga ma'am stated that the thing of water conservation we can definitely do in our day-to-day lives while washing clothes. You see, these are very petty things and small things, but if implemented, it has a lot of, and it has great great impact. uh, yes, my points are uh, these only, that we must include small steps in our day-to-day lives: conserving water, switching off the lights. Consuming electricity is one of the very important and one of the very the basic activity. We just put the light on, and see, in India these things are quite prevalent. So I'll talk in the context of Indian concept. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to give another chance to Professor Kirpal. Professor Kirpal, can you hear me? Professor Kirpal, yes, please. Sorry, I think there is an internet issues. Mr. Dan.
Okay, wrapping up, I would say permaculture is a great solution. It developed in Australia in the 70s. It's kind of a mashup of permanent agriculture, but it's really a way of designing with nature. There's 12 ethics that go from observing, interacting, obtaining a yield, catch and store energy. You could actually take a permaculture design course taught by another person who's become a permaculture designer. It's like a 2-week course, and it's a worldwide system that could really make our biosphere regenerative and sustainable again, and also following the practices of First Nations and original peoples. They were actually practicing food forestry, permaculture, kind of without knowing it. We think that hunter-gatherers were doing just this random thing, but actually they were cultivating these self-integrated ecosystems of food forestry. On the human waste hygiene issue, that's huge. I mean, if we just took care of our water and our waste properly, we could do amazing regenerativity on the environment. And hemp is the best, longest, strongest plant in the plant kingdom, most complex molecules, grows from the equator to the Arctic Circle. It still can save the world. And that's my wrap. And thanks again for this important topic.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor Kirpal, can you hear me? I'm really sorry about that. Mr. Nicholas.
Closing ideas. So I mentioned that we vote with our dollars, and that's very essential in this capitalist world. Capitalism won, okay? Good and bad, whatever you want to say about it, but we vote with our dollars, so be more conscious as a consumer. Well, I mentioned hemp, and so as Dan now, but also cotton was brought up, textiles. Hemp is not just a replacement for cotton, it's a stronger replacement for cotton. In fact, the more you wash it and use it, hemp gets stronger. It's an amazing thing. Also, Dan mentioned in the messages, one thing that you should be conscious with your voting is boycott most sportswear, because sportswear creates microplastics and microfibers that are non-decomposable. They don't break down. They last forever. And at this point, the average human being is eating about a plastic spoon worth of plastic a year, consuming fish and other products. So yeah, and that's a generous estimate now. So you need to be conscious with how you spend your money if you want to be conscious about how an individual can make a difference. You know, reusable bottles help, but more than that, how you spend your money helps. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor Kirpal, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. He's trying actually. I'm really sorry. Mr. Adam.
Thank you. I do think that people with power and influence on the chessboard that is the world stage of intrigue and current affairs, I do think people with power and influence representing particular nations, bodies, authorities need to confront those in power who are riding the waves of their own industrial revolutions, playing catch up. And what is the most diplomatically considerate way that they could confront and be confronted with regards to this issue, especially if it's between nations that already have strained relationships and grievances, beef basically. And if the COVID crisis has taught us anything, it's taught us that it is easier than we first thought to mobilize a global population to fight back against a common foe, and that the majority of said people on a global scale can be socially and culturally engineered to have certain opinions and to think and behave in certain ways. So with this in mind, and surely with a similar magnitude of investment, effort, public relations, legislation, innovation, and camaraderie and comradeship, there is no problem or roadblock that is too difficult to rectify, pollution included. And just wanted to highlight the use of emerging technologies for solutions to this, namely, Mr. Dan reminded me, nanotechnology, cleaning up pollution and repairing pollution damage on the molecular level. But that is something of a deus ex machina, because what will nanotech not be able to do? So I've got an awful lot more to say about nanotechnology. But those are some of my thoughts. Thank you, Sharif.
Thank you. Thank you. This is really very interesting discussion, especially I believe that how we discussing, especially we get a very good views from developing nations as well as very good feedback from developed nation. This is the way actually World Talent Economy Forum we are developing. We are trying to minimize the gap in between developed nations and developing nations, and we need collaborations, we need partnerships, we need people, we need intellectual community like Mosharraf Hossain sir, like Durga Das madam, like Professor David Smith, Professor Kirpal, Professor Donalds, Orpita, and all of Mr. Dan, and everyone need more contributions. And we believe that if the global community can work together, that is very, very important right now. Now we have many challenges, especially we are observing political challenge, we are observing many health-related challenge, and climate change definitely a big challenge for us, especially country like Bangladesh, country like India, country like Indonesia, Maldives. So I believe that we need to take care of we definitely need to take care of it. When problem come and we just jump on it, this is not the way of solving problem. I think we need to take care of these things right now. Even I do not know, maybe my home place, maybe it will goes underwater, I never know. But I believe that we have to work together, and especially the developed nation, what actually Professor Musharraf Hossain asked, we need your partnership. Always Professor David Smith support the initiative of public-private partnerships. We need more support from developed nations, as well as our developing nations has many big corporations, many financially capable organizations, many universities. Government is very capable right now. I know country like Bangladesh, they have 100 years of plan. What will happen next 100 years? They have that kind of plan. So we need to work together. We need proper collaboration. World Talent Economy Forum as a growing as a think tank. We are developing a relationship in between government, corporation and academy. And this way, hopefully, we can solve many things. So if you have any kind of like, we have a very exclusive board of advisors and our expert panelists, those who are highly capable, uh, like, and they run the big organizations. Some run the whole state. Some people running the big business forum. So I believe that if we work together, definitely we can solve this thing. And another thing is very important: talent is everywhere. As I'm from Bangladesh, I know that Bangladesh has a lot of talent. India has talent. South Asia has talent. Even Africa has talent. Asia Pacific has talent. We need to give a proper platform for the young talents, and the youth community get proper support by our panelists, by our board of advisor, by our mentors, and they actually guide them that how to solve the problem. I think this is one of the major problem right now we are facing. We do not have good mentors. We do not have good ecosystem. So sometimes the young populations, they are very, I want to say, they do not have proper objective. So that is the main objective of World Talent Economy Forum. We want to connect 1 million youth communities, and we want to train them. We want to create a job employment opportunity for them. We want to create a startup ecosystem for them. This is the way we can solve the problem. Maybe we can solve the problem of climate change. So thank you. This is really, really great discussions. And how you contributing for today's discussion. This is actually our objective of World Talent Economy Forum. We have a plan. When the COVID situation will overcome, we will arrange offline conference and academy, and then we can meet together and we can do some brainstorming. And this is the new world after the COVID. This is new world. This is new opportunity. So hopefully with our collaboration, we can solve many problems together. So this is the last point. If you want to add the concluding remarks from our expert panelists, because the Professor Donald, Madam Durgadas, Mr. Dan, Professor David Smith, Mosharaf Hossain sir, all of you are highly experienced, and we have our expert youth communities like Mr. Nicholas, Adams, Arpita, all of them actually working for our World Talent Economy Forum as our ambassadors. So hopefully with your guidelines, our young panels, our youth communities, they are from around the world. We have members from more than 150 countries. We have board of advisors around 50 peoples. So hopefully we can find out the better solution from around the world. Uh, I request Professor Mosharaf Hossain sir for the concluding remarks, then Madam Durgadas, then David Smith, then Professor Donalds, and Mr. Dan. Professor Mosharaf
Uh,
Hossain sir.
no, I think you have nicely concluded the whole discussion. We really need a partnership between developed country and developing countries, and within the country, we need partnership, strong partnership between government and the private organization and academician. If we work together, then it is possible. It is not something impossible, but we need to start in a collaborative way, and that will help us to show some positive result. And from day one, we have to show some proactive measures instead of reactive measures. Many of the initiatives in developing countries are turned into a reactive manner. So I think we should change it from reactive to proactive. That will give us better result. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Durgadas.
Actually, Professor Hussein is absolutely right. Collaboration is the only way to go. We've talked about this in several of your other programs. I don't think any one of us is going to solve this all by ourselves. But besides collaboration, what I think which is really, really important, if I have to pick one word, is perseverance, right? We have to persevere. I know Donald spoke about Modi and what he started with Swachh Bharat. He had identified $9 billion for, putting up toilets across the country, public toilets, toilets for poor homes. And it's a lot of money for a country like India. 9 billion just to build toilets is a lot of money. We have a whole bunch of problems to deal with. And it's been considered that the Swachh Bharat program has not succeeded. It has failed. But having said that, one has to appreciate the fact that he started it at all. instead of speaking about it, he actually started the initiative. So these kind of initiatives have to persevere. We should stop looking at what has not worked and failure and persevere the message through. And only then will change start to happen. And to persevere, we need this youth community that you have here on this panel and all the 150 odd that you have across the world, Sharif, to contribute with a one loud voice to insist that whatever initiatives have been taken, we will persevere to keep engaging and to keep making those move forward and not give up and say, oops, that failed. Now let's forget about it. So, perseverance is the one word I want to leave behind. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor David Smith.
I would like to kind of wrap this up with saying what action can people take and how can they work really to help prevent pollution and work through those. And the first thing is groups need to influence policy and legislation. That is one of the basic areas. Second thing is they need to mobilize their neighborhoods, their communities, their companies to be effective in working through these issues. Third thing is putting together coalitions, networks, consortia to deal with pollution. Next thing is change the internal policies of companies, agencies, institutions. Educate people, educate engineers, educate healthcare providers, promote community education, and really finally, for us to be very effective in preventing pollution, we have to educate the entire ecosystem, not just the government, not just academia, not just companies, but we have to educate the entire ecosystem. And that's the only way we're going to be successful.
Once
Thank you. Professor Kirpal, can you hear me? I'm really sorry about that. Professor Donald.
Yeah, I know that India is making doing work, and I'm sorry if I said anything sounded negative about it. It's a hard job. I was thinking that India might be able to learn from Bangladesh because Bangladesh was so successful. I think what we're looking at this level, several people have mentioned education. And even in the United States, there's many people who are ignorant of some of the basic aspects of hygiene and being able to understand what pollution is and what pollution does to ourselves. I mean, and I think that in a country like India and Bangladesh, there's good efforts to be able to reach people so that you can give them these messages. And like where you are on the scale of things, like how good your infrastructure is for the internet and things like that, makes it easier for people to get the messages that you need to have. And as David said, it's a matter of educating the whole ecosystem and being able to educate people to use latrines and to be able to understand why it's important to boil your water. Things like cholera and other diseases set people back their whole life. They can never go as far in their life if they were really sick as children. So it's in a way easy to do because what we're trying to do is not high tech and it's not expensive, and it allows you to be able to start using the human resources of your country to a lot higher degree. And it's hard to compare Finland to India or Bangladesh. India is advancing very fast, and there's parts of India that are just as advanced as Finland. But then there's a large part of India where people are still rural and agrarian, and all of those people need to have basically simple solutions and an understanding of what pollution really is and how it affects their lives.
Thank you. Mr. Dan.
Yeah, to wrap up, I just want to say that I was fortunate to be introduced to the work of Buckminster Fuller at a pretty young age. I had an older brother who told me about him. He was the planet's friendly genius who was a design scientist, a whole system thinker, and he used the term spaceship Earth a lot. But what most people don't know is that that term was actually first used by a guy named Henry George back in 1879 in his book Progress and Poverty. He said, it is a well-provisioned ship on which we sail through space. And he was trying to put out the idea that we need equal access to the resources of nature. People need to be paying for what they take from nature, but they get to keep what they make with those resources. And this is a fundamental truth that many minds, from Milton Friedman to Einstein to Moses, have recognized throughout history. But it's very hard to get our political economy systems to change. But one thing that we can do is encourage proportional representation and ranked choice voting. The U.S., Canada, and Ghana, I think, are the only countries that don't basically have proportional representation. And we could really join the community of nations by having a fairer, more inclusive, political economy system instead of just a duopoly of two parties like we have now. So I'm going to be working at greater inclusion in our political decision-making systems, and let's keep it evidence-based and science-based, like the U.S. Transhumanist Party tries to do. And I'll conclude with those thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas.
I thought we already did our final remark, so just a rehash.
Okay, Mr.
Hemp is a lifesaver. Replaces cotton, could replace a lot of food alternatives. It's an amazing thing. You vote with your dollars as an individual, and just be mindful that everywhere is different and that different individuals need to do different choices that can help the world as well.
Thank you, Mr. Adam.
Yeah, Professor Adrian still there? Oh no, he's gone. Professor Adrian mentioned Japan being quite a densely populated nation that does really well anyway concerning litter, which is a kind of pollution, of course. So we have existing systems to model other places on. Existing examples of high population, densely populated societies that obviously work together in a way that they are one of the cleanest countries to exist. And of course, Japan isn't just densely populated, it is also built up, developed, industrious, affluent. So we have these real life examples for inspiration and to model onto other places in the building living settlements. Thank you, Shu.
Thank you. Madam Orpita.
Yes. So I guess that everybody has put up their point, and the submission of the session has been done very beautifully. You have also put up a very nice point that we need to minimize the gap between the developing country and the developed country. And as Musharraf sir said, that we need collaboration. See, we need collaboration. Collaboration would make us evolve, and collaboration would lead to different kind of development. Then the youth and the people would get a lot of platforms, and with the help of collaboration we can minimize the different kinds of the compulsions, different kind of gaps we face. Yes. So basically we need to look forward towards the collaboration, and as this COVID has been means it's minimizing, we need to work on the ground level, we need to work offline. And yes, thank you very much for generating these sessions and bringing up such expertise on these platforms.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. This is really, really a great session. And I request all of our speakers, I know you are influentials and you have your own community, share our content as much as possible. Even in your classroom, I'm sure we have 348 episodes. All of the world famous speakers, someone from United Nations, someone from big corporations, someone from government, someone from politics, someone from Hollywood. So we are trying to bring all of the talented guy in World Talent Economy Forum, and we are trying to solve our problem with a knowledge-based community, because knowledge is ultimately the way. What Professor David Smith says, that we need to develop a whole ecosystem, and we need to educate everyone, just not only for politicians, not only corporation, not only academicians. We need to create a 360-degree angle ecosystem, and this way we can solve together. And we need open mind, we need collaborations and partnerships, and we need to support the youth people. The youth are ultimately the talented, those who can take a lot of energy, lot of challenges, and definitely the experienced people like today's expertise from around the world. They will support our youth community, and by this way we will overcome from this challenging situation. Thank you, everyone. This is really, really great session. I request all of our audience, share our content with your government, with your policymaker, with your think tank, with your governments, as well as corporation and academy. And I'm sure this kind of content is very, very helpful for your analysis, because we are trying to add most experienced people from around the world, those who have a valuable knowledge, experience, and they are actually like solving their many problems. So thank you, everyone, for today's discussions, and hopefully the next time we can arrange a offline session, and it will be very helpful for everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye bye,
you.
and take
Thank
care.
you. Bye.
Bye bye. Definitely.